Peace. La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. Uh, I made my five prayers. How familiar does that sound? I was waiting to complete my five prayers. Inshallah, I won't forget again. I'm terrified. I mean, it wasn't a case of forgetting. Um, but I'm terrified. Now, it's I've known for ages that I was sort of fulfilling all the prophecies quite quickly. I haven't wanted to make this about me. But there's pretty much just one thing that makes sense, I don't know, to explicate about myself. And actually, I just had a development on it in sort of the same stroke as, like, what? Okay, I was kind of okay with to be a holy empress, but to actually be like, oh, I'm Christ, I just hope that's not a big deal to anyone. Um, it turns out you can be trans intersex, which suits me very well. And alhamdulillah, that's what Allah has inspired me with. That in my own case, like, I have fully identified as a woman, but that has mostly been, in my own case, in alterity to a weak and subjugated class of men who are around me. I don't respect them as men, and I don't see anything as like masculinity or manness in, the people of the West whom I was raised around. So there wasn't anything to emulate, aspire to, and for a long time it has felt very degrading to be referred to as a man, uh, uh, which only really happens by men. I don't like it. I'm nothing like you. I don't wear tight trousers. I don't bunch up in groups. I don't think that I have some special entitlement to things. I don't see myself as superior to women. However, in what capacity am I a woman? Well, it came to me some time ago that I'm a woman because I have suffered, and that I then reflected on, well, no, that day when I first decided that I'm not going to pretend to be a boy anymore, that didn't make me a woman then. But after a certain amount of suffering and sort of learning the types of things that, like, I'll say that a man has things that they can learn from a woman, but a woman doesn't need a man to learn anything, making like the lesbian couple way, way, way better and more understandable than other kind of pairings. But I figured out I can be trans intersex. And interestingly, I can make myself intersex by taking hormones. So then I'm cis intersexed. But like fulfillingly, because no one ever wants to be a trans woman. You can get used to trans status, but like a trans woman is a woman. But society goes, no, you're a trans woman. But in what sense is she a woman? She's a woman because she says so. But then the trans bit is she's only a woman because she says so, and it's like, a caveat, a qualification, this trans thing. At the same time, all of the bodies are unique, and they're not made with respect to two pigeonholes, and they're profoundly and manifestly not, nor do they stay the same throughout their lifetimes. That your biological sex, if you're to measure it properly, it changes more times than you can count, and you can count distinct phases between, the biological sex of a fetus is not the same as a newborn baby. At one point, the fetus is undistinguished, and then by the time it's a baby, usually it's distinguished. There's a lot of malice on other intersex people about how we deal with that in like this country where children are mutilated at birth if they're deemed to have ambiguous genitalia. I find that really offensive that You know, if you show me one person's genitalia and you show me another person's genitalia and you say which one is ambiguous, you can't. I know I don't identify with males around me, and I consider myself to have something like different to males. They act different to me, and they seem to have different capacities. Uh, Males tend to have enough in common to like warrant a word for them, males, and I am male, but I'm not a male. I'm male, but also female. Biologically, manifestly, part of that, and the part that I can be really sure about without having taken any tests, is that I take a lot of estradiol, I take a lot of estrogen, and cancel out my testosterone. That's not to cancel out my masculinity, it couldn't possibly. It's not to cancel out my maleness. Again, it can't. In all the aspects that I'm male, I'm still measurably male in those ways. Testosterone has a lot to do with maleness, where like a chemical turns into a what? I don't know. The only thing I'm really comfortable with, and it's a good just development for me, and obviously my process has a lot to do with documentation. It's only just come now. Um, like the strictest way to talk about biological sex is that we're all intersexed. There's no two extreme points, and there's no two windows. We're just made the way we're made, and everyone's sex is individual, made of parts, made of parts, made of parts, made of parts, made of parts. There's no sensible line that you can draw where, like, on the left is one and on the right is the other, not without missing people out, and that's not sensible. If you wanted to benefit 99% of the world's population, it'd be like the biggest form of oppression you could imagine onto the last 1%. Because that would be big and it would scale, and the neglected are the ones you should think about first, not last. So, anyway, that applies also to categories of biology and gender and stuff. I've moved on to opium too instead of cannabis. I overdosed a little bit yesterday to just check out that that's enough, and let's keep it under that. The reason I take drugs is as anesthetic. My PTSD hurts, and I feel basically more sober when I can not feel that constant pain of what I call physiological terror, where by now I'm cool as a cucumber whilst it's going on, but it still hurts a lot. So I don't really have my own capacity of thought whilst I'm in terrified pain paralysis, and sometimes I can't move. So cannabis has that kind of mystique to it that heroin doesn't have. This just uh, cannabis can make you think really out there ideas, which is great some of the time. It's good for searching, but inshallah, I'm going to try opium to cool me down on this day where I've made 5 prayers in a row for the first time since whenever the last time I made 5 prayers in a day was. Alhamdulillah, it's definitely like not compulsory, but yesterday I accepted like, well, the man stuff then, if I'm going to be intersex, that's for me too. My first question, and it goes like, well, you can do it this way. You can be intersex and trans intersex, but then cis intersex because you're already intersex, and you can take some pills to be intersex, and it's great. You're all intersex. I'd even said it in a thing like, you're all intersex. That's the kind that God makes. But oh, to me too. Well, that works out really well. That's better for me than being a man or a woman, because I don't really have 100% claim to either of those things. And one of them I completely reject because I don't see any men who I think like deserves the same category as me. I seem to try harder than the men that I can see, at least. Um, and I hope I look for better things than the men that I can see. Now that means that there's possibly a whole lot of men who are like oppressed and subjugated into not being able to speak and not being visible. They're also not like me because my entire life is fight to try and help others out of oppression whilst I live with nothing. Like I don't think I have any male competitors. I don't think I have any male peers, but women, uh, absolutely, because we're in a different spot and we do different things. And I don't really judge any of the women except for the ones. No, I don't judge any of the women because even when a woman acts here like one of the subjugated men, which is happening a lot, um, you know, women who have no use for being feminine or ladylike, but instead mannish, just because that's what society celebrates. Still, that's an oppressed person being oppressed. You can't judge that. Um, you know, there's no shame in indigence. But the man has no right to be an indigent. The woman not to be an indigent would have to take over all of man, overthrow all of patriarchy, and that is what I intend. So we went through and he's like, okay, so how much does this affect? Like, what's your preferred pronoun? It's still she. It seems to fit for intersex people too, like if they want it to. And here is no mythology. Here I escape from having my gender asserted to be like an issue of mental health. That no, I'm intersex and you are too. Now he's telling Porky's. Womanness, do I have a right to claim it? I just do. It's part of how I identify. But what is my gender is different to what is my sex. What is my sex? I am intersex, like all the people. Hmm. Opium, I'll let you know how it goes. I think that a lot of people would get a lot out of smoking cannabis if they're the type of people who go to jobs and pay taxes. Um, I mean, hashish, probably the best place to start on that if you're using, just if you've got a lot of stress, but your life's not in danger, hashish helps with that. It helps you forget your memories and your ego. You won't project if you're on hashish. You won't start fights. I don't think you'll misconstrue things very often. Worst thing that'll happen is that in that sort of space, you'll think of things that you can't relate to the rest of the world. I've seen that happen to other people. Hashish and discipline is a good recipe for good, like, algebra and science. Uh, I mean, what am I saying? Good, clear, thereforeing, good use of implicature. Connotations go away. Yeah, connotations go away. Uh, Pertaining to the model of language where we have like points of fact and they're linked by reference relations, and then we have connotations which surround the points of fact and uh, give us a independent means through the same system of ideas. And because the causality between connotations and the causality between points of fact, which is strict implicature, are different, gives us two ways of modeling through. Now, because one is the compaction of the other, or one is the expanded model of the other, that okay, so connotation also works with just these same points of facts, but we're instead involving spaces or volumes as opposed to lines, or there's implicature, then there's never just one way to do that. So they are independent, even though they're made out of the same points, which means that we're not forced to think anything, which is good, because otherwise that would be hard. within physics to do, but it's really important that you have free will and you remember that you have free will and you don't doubt your free will, whether you take it on faith or whether you try and prove it. You can always prove it. You can always just do an experiment for yourself and see if you can choose something. If you can do language that's predicated on having free choice, or else it's not language, just be reproducing something. Uh, you wouldn't have to decode it if you didn't have choice. And in any, I don't know, expression like thing that's made by a thing that didn't have free choice, there's no encoding necessary. Anytime we get it, like a computer works out something, one that's a deterministic computer and doesn't uh, have free choice, always to make it into language, like something with free choice has to encode it. But there's no difference between language and non-language to the computer. Only what is deterministically following and what is not deterministically following. That's different from encoding and decoding. So you don't know, or you don't need to know a language if there's no encoding and decoding involved. The computer doesn't know C. Ah, cool. This feels like a good sharp tangent from everything that was going on before. Um, in terms of fulfilling prophecies and being Christ and stuff, well, that's just stuff that happened. I mean, I had a pretty deep relationship with that stuff for a long time and not considered it special, really. That you're just, I don't want to consider myself special. But I know that the fact that I'm going to be really trustworthy is going to help a lot of people. What's wrong in the world? Why is everyone crying? Why is everyone suffering? Why is everyone stealing from each other? Why is every fucking being stealing from each other? They're not. It's only the humans. Only the humans who watch TV. It's because the truth is wrong. The truth? Kinda. We had to go through this bit that really sucks to separate truth from falsehood. And there's been a lot of falsehood on account of there being free will. There was always going to be a lot of falsehood. Do you know who makes the first sin in the Bible? God. He lies. He says that on the day that you eat that fruit, you will surely die. No. What kind of God would take responsibility for all the sins himself? The creator. I didn't see that. I didn't see that until like today. I thought that the important thing that I had to add to that was that Eve did nothing wrong, and Eve doesn't do anything wrong. Adam's way guiltier because he lies and he says, I'm ashamed. But he speaks for her too. He tries to push his religion onto her when that hasn't been given to her. All this kind of stuff. But it turns out that even better than just blaming it all on men, uh, you weren't really going to die that day if you eat the fruit. And that should be kind of obvious. It doesn't say anything in the Bible about original sin. That comes from St. Augustine, talking about himself. You see how patriarchy spirals out of control. He says that he was, as a kid, with some friends. There was a garden, had some trees in it. I think there were oranges on the trees. And he says, I didn't want them, but I just went in and stole them. I had no reason to whatsoever. So that identifies to me, because I'm St. Augustine over here, that we must all be born with some innate evilness. Because why else would I steal those oranges? That's original sin. Of course, later that started to mean something evil and mysterious about women. It's basically the point where like patriarchy gets malicious towards women. Um, I got open up on here Darius the Great Wikipedia page. I don't think Darius the Great is the Messiah of the Jews, even though he's been said as the Messiah of the Jews. What is it called? Behishton. And he's like, there's this big graven image all over it, which has replaced some of the words. So I don't think that he's really the person who made the Behishton monument, and I don't think his master plan to say, like, you know, let's have this beautiful society where we all speak one language and we'll have McDonald's over here and the Boy Scouts here and the Jews here and the rainbows here and the yeah, that wasn't very good. That's not where we can fit as Jews. And also the vice regency thing. You got one person in the name of God and then other people in their name. Well, that doesn't work either. I pray to God close to tears, saying, please, please, please fix this. The truth is so dirty, it's disgusting. As in, the truth has got contaminated stuff all around it. It's very hard to see. Everything is fractures. Oh my gosh, what the Catholic Church has done. I mean, I'm glad that I care about it. Um, and hey, the gender thing seems to be fixed. Like, no one can refute my gender now. Thank you. I'm intersexed, trans intersexed, and cis intersexed. Intersexed for short. I'm male and female and genderless, but all of that just adds up to I'm intersex. Nobody knows what their gender is, and if you want to know, I mean, your biological sex, and if you want to know your biological sex, you got to make a choice going in. Like, if you want to put it into male and female, you'll say, okay, well, am I checking in chromosomes? Am I checking in phenotype? Am I checking in hormone levels? Am I checking in with whom I could possibly reproduce? And all of those four things are independent. They can even be independent in one body. Like, which bit of my chimerism am I checking in some cases? 4 or 5 independent boxes. 2, 3, 4 or 5 independent boxes. You know, you'll find that checking one of these gives you male and checking one of these gives you female in the same human body that can be perfectly healthy. And as many times as you want to check and find that. Mostly we don't check. You know, the chromosomes don't always match up with the genitals. The hormones don't always match up with the chromosomes or the genitals. What was this one? Oh, breeding pairs. Well, you know, you don't have one of those when you're little or when you're really big. But you got 4, and then complicating that no matter what you check, sometimes a person can have more than one of those sets of 4s in their body. And then you try to get 2 answers out of it. Bollocks. There's no such thing as male and female. Opium. Small doses. Everywhere there's been opium growing in the ground. Critically at this moment, Afghanistan, which has traditionally the best opium. There's no fear of opium. There's no culture of people abusing opium. I'm sure some people at times have, but there's no. Things got bad with opium with the invention of the syringe. I mean, things got dangerous with opium with the invention of the syringe. And gruesome. What it's done to some people. Those people were, in general, badly educated about what it is that they were exposed to. And the stuff that they were exposed to was taken way away from the culture where it's part of the scenery. Part of the furniture. Wherever you've had opium, you don't have fear of opium. But then people got into starting civil wars in foreign countries and then stealing stuff from them. And then finding out that actually that was the graveyard of empires. And it didn't work very well. And a lot of their people, unfortunately, were exposed to stuff they didn't know how to treat responsibly. I don't think that any of the responsible, moderate ways that you can peacefully enjoy opium involve a syringe. I think a lot of syringe opium users would agree with that fact. Yesterday, my friend served up with a pipe. She's not my friend anymore. I have no friends. She was like the last maybe friend I saw a couple of times a year. We checked it out. No. Maybe I'll have friends in the future, but just right now, no. She was a liar. I knew she was a liar. I had seen her lie, and I had said it is absolute self-sabotage to trust the word of a liar, because of course it fucking is. They don't have a control over it. I've seen what lies do. They don't make you honest. I trusted her. She stole all my money, but like that wasn't nearly the worst of it. Oh gosh, it hurts. Like a whole person she sold for a bit of money, and I know biblical. If she got away with the money, obviously we wouldn't really be on the same terms anymore, and she really did. No, we're really not. But hopefully the money is more useful to her than myself, which I don't blame her for making that judgment. And she probably had uses for it. What am I saying? I let her soap up and I overdosed. Really humbling experience, like a tummy ache that wants to kill you. So, whereas before I was going to be pretty liberal about like, look, none of the drugs are prohibited by our scriptures. We're warned against wine in the Quran. Wine is death. Beer is growth. If you leave some wine, if you leave some grapes, squish them up, put them under your bed, go back in 4 days, they'll processed and squishing lots of individual lives together, making them like immiscible. It's okay. We're through the hard part, and as it was spoken, I came to bring this sword and not peace. This time it's peace. This time it's peace. Everyone's joined up together. I mean, peace across fascist Rome would have been an awful idea. It's incredible to see how much like damage, if I'm gonna be Christ, I did that time. Because there's theocracy and patriarchy, and that's history, and theocracy stays. Patriarchy is. It's been 250 years since the French Revolution, when a patriarchy died and a new patriarchy was born, and that new patriarchy hasn't lived 250 years before it's irrelevant. The culture here in England, which is very post-French Revolution, democratic, well, our culture here from 100 years ago doesn't exist anymore. It's got nothing to do with the current culture. Good, so we're not losing anything by cauterizing it all and saying, fuck the past. Fuck the past in particular, in this particular region of the world. If I, Christ, descended from the skies and ran around doing all the things in the Bible, and then, like, having confirmed all of the, what you call the Old Testament stuff, it's rude. It's rude. And then I did all the stuff in the Gospel, which confirms the stuff in the Tanakh. What would you expect? What would you expect to happen after that? Even like the crucifixion and the empty tomb thing and all the things that people said after that, what would you expect? What would you expect to happen? Would it be good? Greater than 1,900 years because the technology is better, but you'd have a World War I purely from the Christian area, purely to invade the Ottoman Empire. Then what? You get me in I mean, you get something after that to say no. So it's good that the bad bit has already happened. If you were thinking that Christ is the Antichrist, indeed. No one else. The goal in life for all of us is the same. To grow. The goal in life for all of us is the same. After this, and not long after now, no, if you're bad and you're underneath another bad in any way, it's not good. Not good for you. You'll never put up with that again. You'll go, no, there are no men in authority above me because there are no men who I can judge to be like more correct and wiser than me. I certainly don't say every man. I certainly don't agree with a bunch of men joining up with weapons to say that they have moral authority over me. That is moot and disgusting. And their word as a council doesn't mean anything more or less because there's a lot of people. Everyone's moral agency belongs to themselves. Your moral decisions belong to yourselves. That includes paying and voting for a big machine that's out of control, which subjugates you and massacres Muslims. Most of the time, we haven't needed police states. Most of the time, we haven't had police states. Most of the time, we haven't needed wars. Most of the time, we haven't had wars. The people who make wars are men who take pictures of themselves. So in history, they're really prevalent. If you look for iconography of people, they're just disproportionately likely to be holding holes. None of this is meant to be rude, and all the people who thought it was okay to be men fucking men, you were wrong. It's incredible. I'm amazed, but it's not arbitrary. It's not in the least. It's not arbitrary. It's not in the least. It's not unrelated to the fact that King Darius the Great has defaced the Behistun inscription. Oh my goodness, even more exciting than that. Do you know what is more amazing than that? There is a prophet in the city speaking his revelations. A wolf said that. In Arabic. I found that someone had found. I'm not going to do any. I found that someone had found. I'm not going to do any meta commentary to this because it's just so amazing. I just want to read it out. Unless it's not immediately here, and then I'll leave it as a mystery. That had been moved from a. I'll just show you and then read it. This is the most amazing thing I've ever heard. In June 2011, archaeologists from Bar Ilan and Tel Aviv universities announced the recovery of a stolen ossuary plundered from a tomb in the valley of Elah. The Israel Antiquities Authority declared it authentic and expressed regret it couldn't be studied in situ. Well, I'm not regretful of this at all. This is most of the miracle for me. I'm really, really glad that happened. That they didn't find it where it was taken from. MashaAllah. That's good for everyone. It is inscribed with the text, Miriam, daughter of Yeshua, son of Caiaphas, priest of Ma'atzia from Bet Imri. Based on it, Caiaphas can be assigned to the priestly course of Ma'atzia instituted by King David. It doesn't say in the Bible what's the name of the family of the virgin who gave birth. But in the Quran, it says the family of Imran. And this text it's incredible. It's been taken from her tomb by all looks of it. Caiaphas is mentioned in the Bible. SubhanAllah. So it's really good that we didn't find it in situ, because there's someone really, really precious whose body doesn't need to be disturbed, hanging out where that ossuary was. But that doesn't seem very ambiguous to me. It's like one of those rare times where we have a historical artifact that matches something from the Bible. But grief, that's a big deal. That seems like it's taken from my mother's tomb. I don't have another mother. I wanted to be her. Not that weird. I don't know why that strikes me so much. I found it today. Just wow. I won't go on about it. Allah calls me Mama sometime because I relate to Mariam. I don't make anything up. It's not the type of thing that anyone really should need to say about themselves. Let's see what we got. Books. By now it is well past when I had prayed to the Almighty, may I be a prophetess. Allah is the most kind. The answer was yes. I confirm and convey. With many special thanks to my colleagues Shamim Begum, Tajweed. Yeah, they did. Sometimes you can hate a thing and it's good for you. Aisha's Wishes, New Hope, Hujjat 1, The Time Travel Report. See, this is really old. I don't know what I'm about to say. Once, when I was locked in a cell, I wrote a short piece in about 5,000 words. Happened more than once, not a trial. 5,000 words. Happened more than once, not a trial. Indeed. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim Malik Yawmiddin Iyyaka na'budu. I agree with that. The 7 oft-repeated verses. It's fairly difficult to see which 7 they are indeed. Like, how do you break that up into 7? And not to say that anything is that. Allah knows what is mustaqim, which is the point of it. Well, you don't need to add up anything further than that, unless we have to. You know, for everyday prayers. We don't need to be set in alterity to anything when we're speaking to God. The new Queen's Peace, Aisha Khalida. Better for everyone. Oh gosh. Peace, my late, the Hijra, the revert. Peace, my lady Elizabeth, beloved to myself and many, may you pass your reign to me and live forever peacefully in comfort, never demanded of or held to scrutiny. May you see many happy days to come for your family and our wider family, and for these great lands gathered in sovereignty. Please may you pass your responsibilities to me. That was done. Ya Umati, Ya Umati, Ya Umati. And that's that book. I don't know how it's supposed to work. Right. Opium is an alternative to cannabis. The vivid colors of cannabis. Opium is not. It's just calm and straight. I'm going to be a lot more easy to like understand and believe. Well, hopefully I'm not difficult to understand. But, like anywhere I go and I talk about my truth, obviously I'm a demon. But I'm not a demon. Same as other people, which puts me in a weird spot. I still got a load of maths, and it's kind of the end of maths and the beginning of something different. Because we did the first bit. Imagine a puddle of viruses. I got this idea of half, or what do we call it? Sublife. Right. Start with what is a person? If you can recognize slime mold, beautiful yellow bacteria that they're really great at solving the traveling salesperson problem. They can tell the difference between themselves, things like themselves, which means they are persons, even though they can gather and make into capacities of persons. Can those communities tell the difference between themselves and another community like it? No. So the community isn't a person in that way. Humans can, and human communities can. Right. So, but bacteria from about the level of a mold thing, personhood, genocide. But viruses don't stay consistent along the whole time of their life. And basically, if a virus eats something, it doesn't get something out of it. And a virus doesn't have a shape to say, I am this shape and I am different to these other things. Virus is constantly mutating. It doesn't get anything out of living. It can't reproduce. It's I call it sublife. Like it's if you've got lifelike processes, then the shadow of those movements, the convex model, is going to be something like what bacteria does. What viruses do. To kill a virus, we should never really feel ashamed of that. We don't have to, but we can. Oh, I got the cure for coronavirus. Just stay inside for 3 weeks. There'll be no more coronavirus in the UK. It's odds with the businesses if you're thinking in the short term. But no. Just which is the case with face masks. And sure, stay inside. If you can do that for 3 weeks, you don't have coronavirus in that cordoned off area. And you've only got to worry about quarantining people who come in and out. Give each of those 3 weeks. No more coronavirus in that area that you sectioned off, where everyone either wore masks or stayed inside. There might be other solutions, but they're all way riskier and don't exist yet, so that's what we'll do. Inshallah. It's not obvious. It's just not what anyone was shouting really loudly. I'm never going to publicize myself. I don't have a way to do it. I don't have that kind of vanity, but a massive aversion to that kind of vanity. So I'm never going to share my stream. I'm never going to publish myself. This is just where it happens, and I'll always choose what happens. Um, Sublife viruses, including coronavirus. Imagine you had a big pile then, a big sphere of viruses, just in some suspended fluid, maybe. And they're all wriggling and mutating, and like when one eats one, it goes into the other, and blah blah blah. After some time, you would get one of the virus evolves as to be able to assimilate all of the other viruses in there. Because it had done so, it would have some rules that are compatible with all of them, and it would have then some concordance between all of the things in its parts, which before they were independent parts that were all these straggly viruses. You would definitely, after some time, get something that mutates to be able to assimilate the whole puddle of viruses into one thing, which now, when it grows, it does benefit something. It would become life once the virus had eaten all the viruses. It would become a thing that was able to sustain itself and to eat and, I guess, to reproduce, but I haven't gotten that far in how that would happen. Well, it's got a limited capacity because it's finite, so there should be a size after which it doesn't want to eat anymore without reproducing. What do I mean? It doesn't want to. I mean, it can't. Why? Because the rules of this abstract virus, which ate all the other viruses, is finite, and it's going to eat all of those other viruses, and it can eat other stuff and get bigger. Why does it reproduce? It's going to bump into a new rule that it hasn't ever met before about how big can this one cooperative system of viruses get before its initial rule to take over all of the viruses runs out, and it can't build another structure. It's good at assimilating each of those viruses, but it's not defined and to make bigger and bigger collections of molecular stuff. It's got its rules of assimilation, mutation that manage to catch all the things. Does that imply by itself that there's a biggest size that it can get to? Size. Why would it reproduce? Oh, because if it didn't, but there was a possibility that it could, then the ones that did would take over. And you've always got lots of chances, because we haven't said anything about how often it happens. I'm the one who's going to take over. It doesn't seem reasonable at all, but I'm going to be the Queen Empress of the world, all of it. It's not ethical at all for me to just take one part of the land and say, okay, I'll be in charge of that bit, because my being in chargeness is good. I'm a theocracy. I don't die. And in the flesh, I'm not going to die. It's way better than a pack of counselors. We've tried the alternative. And that's a lot of what the past chapter in history has been about. People in the West don't realize how bad they have it, which is a shame. Because it then puts a bar on like how good things can be, especially if you're in the West and you think that how the West is the best that it can possibly be in 2020. It's not nearly the truth. You're in a region where the truth got busted up by patriarchs. Uh, the same ones oppressing you are the same ones telling you your truth. It's frightening, it's scary. One of those things, you can have pretty much whatever you want, but there are certain combinations that are just too specific. I'm reminded of Wittgenstein's beautiful, beautiful. The human body is the best picture of the human. All people who would be offended by the actual truth being that men identified people shouldn't fuck men identified people. Um, they're just not the ones who matter at this moment in time. And the truth that they're getting in place is that it's going to be so much better than what you thought. So much better. What are we going to have? Microwaves outside, vending machines outside that have free post mix and hot water in them. Costs nothing. Make everyone really happy. No individual paying for electricity. That's just absurd. No, it's retarded. It's despicable and backwards and slows down the rest of the world. Why does a power plant need to ask them with their costs of producing energy? They don't. It's all very gruesome. We're gonna make it so safe to sleep outside that there's a good option for anyone who doesn't need to stay in the same place. We're also gonna have beautiful little self-contained. We did some crack in a public toilet. You pay 20p, and you go in here, and I mean it's warm, it's quiet, it's completely away from the outside. There'd be no homelessness already. It's not an accident that I'm here. It's kind of the most pristinely grotesque. Here's what happens when you put men in charge and ask them to try to procure peace by making up more and more and more and more laws as they go along. Queen Elizabeth the First. It's all spelled out so well in our history. She comes and well, the thing I want to point out is that she came to the throne speaking 16 different languages. She spoke every language that was spoken across Britain. Obviously, we've got far less culture now and far fewer kinds of people in Britain than would require a sickly song dead. Stories that they dead. She comes to the throne speaking 16 different languages. By the time she dies, well, already the sort of nobility class are trampling all over her with the Stuarts, and the Stuarts are a mixed bag perfectly. That with Stuarts, and the Stuarts are a mixed bag perfectly. That they're kind of great, and they're kind of the worst. Either way, it didn't do any good for the British people, and the nobility classes here were given such everything that's called authority that has been asserted has been the most directly weaponized against all the people. In fact, that the systems of torture and outright torture that were created for the working class English people by the English nobility people with the ascent of the crown since Henry VIII. You know, they go beyond concentration camps in cruelty, which is an ancient history. Fuck, there's such thing as an immigration detention center. Such thing as millions of people paying taxes towards them and voting for it. It's like if you just paid taxes, we could go, oh yeah, well you were being oppressed. If you just voted for it, at least you're not enabling it. But if you're enabling it and voting, How can you consider yourselves moral at all? So then how can you opine? How can you go around saying they're in the wrong, they're in the wrong, they're in the wrong, knowing where it goes, knowing what you're doing, then voting for it? You could have said you didn't have a choice, but you voted for it. People who didn't vote and didn't pay taxes, you're my best friends. People who voted, what are you doing? Like entering a raffle to see if your I only serve the rights of some people, people get involved. How can you be fooled by this? Since universal voting, democracy has never been good for the poor. Since before then, at least usually there was like a monarch with some say whose job was sort of to make sure that the nobility don't go wild. Who are the nobility? People who have bought, they have the same interests? No. Who's in charge of the armies? Fucking nobody. Who's going to be in charge of the armies? Me. Because I'm the Queen of England. Tell them to come back. No. I'm the Khalifa. I've got threats. And a big army. And a big army. I would about do it. And it would only be threats. Would it even need to be threat? It would need to be threat. As opposed to punishment, we at least need to spell out that there was violent threat involved. It's not good enough for me for the straggly wanton armies who are spread out all over the place to come home and say they're sorry. Is it? No, it would be good enough for me starting day one that would be the case. That would be okay. How will they do it? The only person which that's me, I got that covered. What about the US and France? They're both rogue beyond rogue. What do we do? I mean, maybe just like mess over there. You're more human to us than you are people who paid you to come over here to kill us. You can stay if you want. We don't acknowledge your borders and political situations. No. Take nothing. Oh God, get them while their pants are down. It might come up. I'm expecting 80,000. It might come up. I'm expecting 80,000. We're gonna get a way better internet, which works in leaves and does calculus, unlike binary, spelled out in ways that won't reduce to mean. It's amazing. It gives us all the stuff that doesn't follow directly from logic that exists, and it's real. All the stuff that doesn't result directly from logic. What's an expression? What's an expression? It's built up of expressible things. What's an expression? A gesture with meaning. Yeah. Is that it? I guess. I'm gonna get rid of the jizya tax. There's no need for a static army anymore. There's certainly not. It's prophesied. Start. There's not other life out in there in the universe. That would be way worse. We're the only ones. Every life like us for extremely good reasons. We are going to get DNA sequencing grammar sorted out. So language. I don't understand this thing about what's an expression. A gesture, because you don't, there are logical expressions and they're not attached to a gesture. They're not attached to a particular kind of. I feel like there's something I'm not getting here. What's an expression? Is it yes? Yes, what is an expression? Okay. That seemed to the past. It'd be really interesting to and say, do you want to just delete all your past right now? But patriarchal is that truth? I mean, not all. Right. They have a good died as good Christians, but I don't understand who else could be Christians. What would it mean to be a Christian? You're certainly not into priests. Not by the time you're an adult. Christ, who are about pain, better to come. We're going to see how soon.